Darkness falls. An eerie silence hangs in the air, broken only by the distant chirping of crickets. Two pencils lie crossed on a sheet of paper, forming a makeshift Ouija board. Yes and no are scrawled in opposite quadrants. This is the game of Charlie, Charlie. A portal to the unknown. A doorway to be used with caution, for the entity on the other side is fickle and unforgiving. The air grows heavy, thick with anticipation. A sense of dread seeps into the silence, a warning whispered on the wind. But curiosity, like a siren's call, often drowns out the whispers of caution. Four teenagers, bored and restless on a Friday night, huddled in a dimly lit room. The air was thick with anticipation, and the faint hum of a distant radio added to the eerie atmosphere. There was Liam, the skeptical one, always questioning the supernatural. Mia, the adventurous soul, always seeking the next thrill. Jake, the easily spooked, who had a knack for getting scared at the slightest provocation. And Chloe, the quiet observer, who often watched from the sidelines, taking in every detail. They had gathered for a night of spooky tales, sharing ghost stories and urban legends that sent shivers down their spines. The conversation had naturally turned to the infamous Charlie Charlie game, a modern-day Ouija board that promised to summon spirits.
I dare you, ask Charlie if he's here.
Mia challenged, her eyes gleaming with a mix of fear and excitement. She loved the adrenaline rush that came with these dares, the way it made her heart race. She looked pointedly at Jake, knowing his fear would only add to the thrill. The room fell silent, all eyes on Jake, waiting for his reaction.
Hesitant. Okay, Charlie, are you here?
Jake hesitated, his eyes darting nervously between the others. He could feel the weight of their expectations, the pressure to go through with the dare. And the crude Ouija board they had hastily put together with a piece of paper and a pencil. The makeshift board seemed to pulse with an unseen energy, adding to the tension in the room. He knew it was foolish, but the dare hung in the air, a challenge he couldn't resist. The room seemed to hold its breath as they waited for a response, the silence growing heavier with each passing second.
Trembling. Charlie, are you here?
With trembling hands, Jake repeated the words, his voice barely a whisper. The room was thick with tension, every creak and groan of the old house amplified in the silence. The room held its breath. Every eye was fixed on the pencil, waiting, hoping, dreading. Seconds stretched into an eternity. The ticking of the clock seemed louder, each second a hammer blow in the silence. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, the pencil on top began to move. It was as if an unseen hand was guiding it, a force beyond their understanding. It trembled, rotated, and finally came to rest, pointing firmly at yes. The air grew colder, a chill that seemed to seep into their bones.
Gasp. Did you see that? It really moved.
Gasps filled the room, followed by nervous laughter. The tension broke, but the unease lingered.
Skeptical. It's just a draft, guys. There's no such thing as ghosts.
Liam, ever the skeptic, dismissed it as a draft, but the seed of doubt had been planted. The others exchanged uneasy glances, their minds racing with possibilities. Mia's eyes widened with excitement, while Chloe, usually the quiet one, leaned forward, her gaze fixed on the moving pencil. The atmosphere was electric, charged with a mix of fear and curiosity. A cold shiver ran down her spine. Something wasn't right. The room felt different, as if they had crossed a threshold into the unknown. The pencil's movement was just the beginning. The next morning, the events of the previous night seemed like a distant fever dream. But as the day wore on, strange occurrences began. Liam found himself plagued by whispers. His name hissed in his ear when no one was around. Mia's reflection in the mirror winked at her, a mischievous grin spreading across its face. Jake, already the most frightened, started seeing shadows lurking at the edge of his vision, their forms indistinct but menacing. Chloe, the most attuned to the supernatural, felt a constant presence, a cold breath on the back of her neck. Fear, once a playful guest, had taken up permanent residence in their minds. Section 5. Escalation. The supernatural activity intensifies. The hauntings escalated with terrifying speed. Objects moved on their own, lights flickered and died. Disembodied laughter echoed through empty hallways. Sleep offered no escape, replaced by nightmares of a shadowy figure with eyes that burned like hot coals. The teenagers were living in a nightmare, haunted by the consequences of their careless curiosity. Fear turned to terror. They tried to forget, to pretend it wasn't happening, but the entity they had contacted was not so easily ignored. They had opened a door that could not be closed, unleashed a force they could not control. Section 6. Seeking Answers. The teenagers researched the entity. Desperate for answers, the teenagers delved into the origins of the Charlie game. They were determined to uncover the truth behind the mysterious and terrifying occurrences that had been plaguing them. They scoured the internet, consulted dusty tomes in the library, and sought out local legends. Every piece of information they found seemed to lead them deeper into a web of dark history and supernatural lore. What they discovered chilled them to the bone. The more they learned, the more they realized how dangerous their situation had become. Charlie, they learned, was not a benevolent spirit, but a malevolent entity, a demon drawn to the fear and curiosity of the living. This entity thrived on the energy of those who summoned it, growing stronger with each fearful thought and anxious whisper. They had unwittingly invited a predator into their lives, and it was feeding on their terror. The realization that they had become prey to such a sinister force was almost too much to bear. The realization hit them like a ton of bricks. They felt a mix of fear and urgency, knowing that they had to act quickly to protect themselves and their loved ones. They had to do something, and quickly, or they would become another cautionary tale in the long and bloody history of the supernatural. With determination in their hearts, they began to formulate a plan, hoping to find a way to banish the entity and reclaim their lives from the grip of fear. Section 7. The Abandoned House. Facing their fears. Legend had it that the entity Charlie was drawn to places of sorrow and despair. An abandoned house on the outskirts of town, rumoured to be the site of a gruesome tragedy, became their only hope. They knew they had to confront Charlie, to banish him back to the darkness from whence he came. Armed with salt, candles, and a desperate prayer, they entered the house. The air inside was thick with the stench of decay and the palpable weight of unseen eyes. Fear threatened to cripple them, but they pushed on, their terror outweighed by a glimmer of hope. The house was a labyrinth of shadows and whispers. As they ventured deeper, the air grew colder, the shadows more menacing. They found themselves drawn to the attic, a stifling space cluttered with broken furniture and cobwebs. And there, in the center of the room, stood the Ouija board they had used to summon Charlie. The pencils moved with a frantic energy, spelling out messages of hate and despair. The temperature plummeted, and the shadows seemed to converge, taking on a life of their own. Then he appeared, a swirling vortex of darkness, a grotesque mockery of a human form. Charlie.
You cannot banish me. I am eternal.
The battle was intense, a desperate struggle against an unseen force. They fought back with everything they had, their fear giving way to a primal instinct for survival. In the end, through a combination of courage, desperation, and maybe a touch of divine intervention, they managed to banish Charlie back to the darkness. The house fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting like a shroud. The teenagers emerged, battered, bruised, but alive. They had survived their ordeal, but they were forever changed. The innocence of youth had been replaced by a chilling awareness of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of their world. Life went on, but the experience left its mark, a scar that time couldn't easily heal. The shadows seemed a little darker, more menacing, the whispers a little clearer, more unsettling. They couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed them home, a presence they couldn't see, a lingering presence that watched and waited, always there. The game of Charlie. Charlie had seemed like harmless fun at first, but some games, they learned, are best left unplayed, never to be touched again. For in the realm of the supernatural, the unknown, curiosity can be a deadly curse, a perilous path.